Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Leo, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of November 2025. I hope you are well. I have not been, and that's why these readings are a little late this month. So thank you for waiting for me. I appreciate it. I'm using the Tower of the Divine for you today. Here it is. So, things to tell you before we begin. If the reading resonates and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's via the first link in the description box below. That one will take you to Selfie. Alternatively, you could come over to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on the Circle platform. But there you can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee. So that isn't just the extendeds for each of the signs for the month. It's also weekly energy readings. We do divination exercises over there. We've got live classes running over there too, and we've just started a monthly kind of community meet-up, read cards for each other sessions, which are really, really cool. So if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, please do feel free to check out the links below. Anyway, Leo, let's have a look and see what's going on with you, because in the meditation that I did before I started this reading, there was something really quite intense going on, and it was all very much centered around the third eye. It felt like it was cranking wide open, which is an interesting sensation. So let's see what's going on and see if we can't pinpoint why that is happening. Give me 3 cards for Leo, please. Wow, okay. There's the first one. We have the Ten of Pentacles in your recent past. What about current energy, please? Leo, what's going on with you? Fucking hell. There's a lot of cards that are trying to turn over here, Leo. I'm seeing them. All right, okay, so we have the Nine of Cups and we have the Nine of Pentacles, both of them showing up in the reverse, which is quite interesting. We'll get to that in a second. What about what's coming towards Leo for November, please? Thank you. We have the Two of Swords. That's very interesting, right? Because we have the Eight of Wands at the bottom of the deck. That is Mercury in Sagittarius. So we're talking about either information coming in to you very, very quickly, or some sort of communication that is taking place very, very quickly. Now, when I say communication, I'm using a fairly broad brush on that term, right? Because we could be talking about you talking to other people, but we could be talking also about information that is coming to you from, through non-standard means, let's put it that way. I don't like the term download. I think it's got a digital transhumanist aspect to it that I quite frankly find nauseating in 2025. So I'm not going to use that, but whatever, approximation of a similar sort of term meaning a similar sort of thing that you can think of, we might well be thinking about that. So tell me about the Ten of Pentacles. Why is this here? Thank you. We have a reversal. It is the Empress reversed. And 2 cards on their side. 5 of Cups, Ace of Swords. Tell me about the 9 of Cups and the 9 of Pentacles reversed. We have the Magician. We have the Page of Pentacles. And we have the 2 of Wands. And what about the 2 of Swords? What's going on with the 2 of Swords? We have the 4 of Wands. Got the 8 of Swords has flipped, but I'm going to put it back in because it didn't jump. And about the 2 of Swords. Why is this here for Leo? Hierophant flipping. There we go. Page of Swords. There's a lot going on here. And unfortunately, Leo, I don't think that you've got quite as clear a grasp on it as you would like to have. Right, such that it would give you the confidence to move forwards in a particular direction. There's a lot about moving on faith here, or perhaps more accurately, moving on will. Now, for a fire sign, that should be a pretty straightforward process. But this year's been pretty brutal, I think, for Leos. At least by house, we have the energy of Pluto opposing whatever placements you have in Leo. So in my case, I'm a Leo Sun, a Leo Moon, a Leo Mercury, and a Leo North Node. Also, Vertex is in Leo as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on in Leo, right? So every single one of those things is currently struggling with Pluto kind of like mashing away from the opposite side of the circle, right? And we have to be aware that that is kind of forcing a deepening in our understanding, a deepening in the way that we show up, a deepening in our authenticity, you know, all these kinds of things. So to that extent, I'm not really surprised to see some of the things that we've got going on here. When you are pushing yourself out of your natural bounds, well, I might say your comfort zone. I've had this conversation with Taurus quite a lot, right? It would be nice to have a map to see where you're going, right? Where is the end result? Because then we could orient ourselves towards it, and start moving in that direction. The whole point of the exercise is that there is no map. It's about forcing you to reach inside of yourself and work out what it is that you actually want. And I think that that's a difficult question to answer. It's more difficult to answer than it should be. But then I don't think many people spend time on that kind of Plutonian level really considering what they want, as they should do. Quite often it's the mimetic desire of what everybody else wants. And so, okay, well, that's what we want too, because then, you know, we will achieve some sort of status, prestige, or you know, good standing amongst our social group because we have the things that apparently make us a worthy human being, right? So if you cut all of that away and say, no, what do you actually want, Leo? Right, sat in front of me now. What do you want, and how are you going to go and get it? Most people would look at you kind of blankly. And what I'm seeing here is a progression from an old version of achievement orienting towards something new. But you don't have a map. No. No map, no clarity, no sense of anything other than there's a long path and you're probably going to be walking it, right? Now, I don't want this to sound depressing, because I don't actually think it is depressing. I think it's incredibly fucking magical. And I think where you end up is a direct result of this willingness to be brave enough to just keep walking and see where it is that you end up with what you want in mind. But if we start over here first, with this Ten of Pentacles, we have a state of completion on something. Now, the Ten of Pentacles can represent all sorts of things. It can represent stability and security. It can represent your business. It can represent your home. It can represent generational karma, generational trauma. I see these through the Ten of Pentacles too. What's important is something that you have worked really hard for is now coming to an end, right? In its current state. And that could be as much as anything, like what you considered to be valuable up until a certain point, right, has now shifted and morphed in front of you. And now that thing doesn't seem to have the same quality that it had before, right? Because you've kind of moved the goalposts on yourself, right? Or you have grown, you have evolved. I think a lot of that has happened this year in 2025 for Leos. I don't think any of it has been comfortable, but it's been going on nonetheless. So if we arrive at an end, which a 10 always is, where we've hit the end of a cycle somewhere, and then we also see that we have cards of initiation, which we do in the Ace of Swords, to an extent in the Magician, the Page of Pentacles, the Page of Swords. There's a transition happening here. Not quite closed out, but not yet fully engaged on the new path yet. I think that's the way that I would put it. It's close, it's very close, because the Magician will tell us that. But it's like we have to draw information from a different place to where we are usually more likely to find it, right? The fact that the Empress is up in reverse here, I think is a good indication that where you are is somewhere that you have outgrown. Now, if you are if this is to do with a physical building for you, then it could be the realization that it's just simply too small for your needs, for example, right? We need to move into something else. Conversely, it could be too big for your needs, and actually you want something that is a little bit more manageable. If it's to do with work and business and employment and things like that, it's like, well, maybe now it's time to take the retirement, take the money and run. It could be that you've outgrown the role that you've been doing for quite a long time, and it's time to look for something else. The Empress says what did fulfill the needs, what did make everything comfortable, is no longer comfortable. Remember that the Empress is a Venus-ruled energy. You see this symbol for Venus right there. it indicates comfort and fertility and abundance and the senses of those. So when she shows up in reverse, it's like, this isn't cutting it anymore. This is not what I want. This is not giving me what I need. And that balance between what is comfortable and uncomfortable is now tipping more in favor of what is uncomfortable. And there are fewer and fewer ways to justify staying where you are. This is what I think, right? If it's something else, some other aspect of that, then it could be the realization that the stability and the security that you thought that you had isn't quite as, it doesn't really have legs, right? It's not going to see you forward much further, because the Five of Cups is an interesting card of instability, particularly around emotions. But the instability of the Five of Cups actually comes from the stasis, right? So we don't have that pure static energy going on. We've got some movement in it because it's not showing up in the upright. But we're not entirely sure whether this is an energy that is shuffling into view, ready to present itself properly, or whether this is an energy that is actually on the turn. If I am honest, Leo, I think it's an energy that's on the turn. I think that you have stayed where you have been for a while because it felt safer to do that. But you didn't realise that it was an expression of you kind of thinking small. And I think that's possibly what this is about. It's time to start stretching your vision out a little further into something else, right? Into a longer term plan, right? Now we've got the Ace of Swords on its side there because I think part of the stasis is there's been a loss of confidence in whether you are doing the right thing, whether you are thinking the right thing, whether you are seeing things the right way, or whether, you know, this is some sort of spectral expression of catastrophization that's going on in your head, right? Or quite the reverse, right? Things that you're refusing to look at that are actually a problem. It's difficult to tell at this point because the energy is just simply pointing to the fact that there are facts that are floating around here, and they aren't necessarily distinguishable from the things that are not factual. I think that's how I would read these cards, right? So with all of that said, we move into your current energy, and we have both the Nine of Cups and the Nine of Pentacles showing up in the reverse. Now, this is important because this very much centers this around you, Leo. Your desires, your wants, the things that you need to feel emotionally fulfilled, and the things that you need to feel independent. Both of these cards, numbered 9 as they are, speak to the individual management of what element they are representing at any given point, right? So this is how you manage your resources. This is how you manage your emotions, right? And we have everything that flows therefrom. If you manage your resources well, you can maintain independence, you can do the things that you want to do, so on and so forth. If you manage your emotions, then you know, you're not being hijacked by your nervous system all the time, right? You can feel fulfilled in things. You can feel purposeful in things. When these cards show up like this, what we have is either a mismanagement of both of these elements, emotions and resources perhaps not being aligned, or, and I think that this is possible because it seems like it's a slow dawning realization to you, Leo, rather than some sort of, you know, major epiphany moment. The realization that you are not where you need to be, and in fact you do need to be somewhere else, is bringing up these issues of what is it that you actually want? What is it that you can actually, with the resources that are available to you, and the answer on the face of it may feel like it's very little, except that we have this magician showing up underneath here, who is a significant reminder of the fact that we create our own reality. Now, as I'm looking at these cards, I'm noticing this interesting yellow backdrop, which is actually moving right way through this this period of time that we're talking about here. Now, yellow is the colour of communication, but it's also the colour of intelligence, right? It's almost like sunlight too, which would be important for you, Leo, because, you know, your ruling planet is the sun. Your card in the tarot, one of them at least anyway, is the sun. And it's like, if you haven't thought about these things properly before, which is to say what you want and what it is that you're prepared to commit to, work for, to have, you know, your independence and all that kind of thing, then it would be very difficult to see how you are supposed to get those things, right? Because in the first instance, you actually have to know what you want. And this is what the magician does. He applies his will with all of the aces on the table so that he is literally, acting as a lightning rod for the energy of the universe to manifest the kind of reality that he wants to live. Now, if he didn't know what kind of reality he wanted to live, the whole thing is fucking undone to start with. So it feels like the magician here is an exhortation to you, Leo, to start getting very, very clear about what would fulfill you and what would make you feel independent, what would give you what you needed. Because what was just isn't cutting it anymore. We can see that with these energies here. And I think the movement that's going on is giving you a bit of space to turn within and start the process of trying to work out what has shifted with you and why things feel so fundamentally like they need to change. Now, I don't know if you've been waiting for a change to happen at you, Leo, but I would say if you have, then that's possibly where the issue has been developing for you. Tell me about these double nines, please. Thank you. You don't know what you want, and we've got literally an eclipse going on here, right? Blocking the energy of the sun to see what it is that you want, what you can do, what you need to feel independent, what you need to feel fulfilled, all that sort of thing. What about this magician? Why is the magician here? Page of Wands here, right? Page of Swords. The only page that you're missing is the Page of Cups, and I don't think this is necessarily now as much of an emotional issue for you as it was before. Like, it still is some, because, we've got water all over the table here. We've got it in the Five of Cups. We've got it in the Nine of Cups. We've got it under here with the moon, right? The moon is your internal subjective experience, which is deeply influenced by your emotional state, right? It is the things that make landscapes seem unclear, right? You illuminate things by the light of the moon, and you are going to get a subjective, reflected kind of sense of what is, rather than a clear outline of the path that you're trying to follow, right? Again, you see it right here. There's another eclipse going on this moon card, right? Something about your pure will, right? The pure sunlight that is you is being blocked at this point. But I don't think it's emotional, because we've already got some movement going on here. I think in the first instance, just the acceptance of the fact that maybe you have outgrown whatever it is that you've been involved in has been enough to start those wheels moving a little bit. But it says to me here, between the cards that we've got going on, particularly the pages, is that you have everything that you need to effect the changes that you want to make. The magician would say this too. The magician is showing up strong. Yes, is in the clarifiers, but the main issue is the fact that you don't know what you want, and you don't know how to get what you want. You don't know if you've got the resources to get what you want. But how can you make that kind of decision if you don't know what you want in the first place? I did a weekly energy reading. I don't know if it was last week or the week before. Can't honestly tell you. Every single fucking week of this year has just blended into another. Like, I have no idea where I am. Right. But the weekly energy reading that I'm thinking about, I was actually talking about whether we really truly understood the difference between what we needed and what we wanted. And I think maybe that's the first important decision, or even division, that you need to make between the options that are open to you at this time. Because the energies of the aces are amazing for presenting novel experiences, right? The Ace of Swords in the upright can be the epiphany moment. The Ace of Wands in the upright can be an opportunity for the expression of creation and creative impulses, right? Or passion projects. It can be changing the way that you do things, right? But it's all about the potential in that card. Now, the pages have a similar kind of vibe to them, but it's nowhere near as powerful, right? Because the novelty is not there. What the pages do as the first rung on the ladder to the court hierarchy is introduce either a new way to use skills and things that we have, right? Or a way of taking what we have and moulding it gently into something else so that we follow a new path through to the maturation that is depicted in the kings, right? And the queens. Kings and queens together. So we've got one Ace of Swords, which is effectively on its arse there. Very difficult to discern what is the truth of any given situation because emotions have been kind of locked up on staying where you are. But then here we've got the Page of Pentacles, the Page of Wands, the Page of Swords, the Page of Swords. This is saying so much of what needs to be changed is coming from within you. So the Page of Pentacles is about what you choose to invest in because you think it has value, because you think it is important. First, it's important to ascertain what those things are for you, right? It's a priority list for sure. But the Page of Wands is about getting ready to start the journey of the acquisition, of the experience of this thing, right? With values held front and centre, priorities front and centre. But these double Page of Swords are saying there's something that kind of needs tweaking about the way that you are looking at the situation. Because there's a change of perspective here that comes through with the Page of Swords. Now, when you combine this with the fact that we've got double Two of Swords and the Two of Wands here, it means that everything's centering around what you choose. And I think that's probably the last thing that you would have thought was what was influencing the situation that you're in at the moment. And it sounds kind of silly when I say it out loud like that, but I do think that that is what's happening here. Because the Two of Swords, by definition, is obscured information, obscured perspectives. And more often than not, for me, the Two of Swords is obscured by emotions we don't want to look at, or emotions that have been so overpowering that we just pretend that they don't exist, right? No, it's all about facts and logic. There's very little about 2025 that's running on facts and logic at the moment. Leo, I think pretty much from day one, 2025 has not been like that. And I do think that it's important to get all of this shit aligned before we move into 2026, because with, I believe, every single fucking planet moving into either a fire or an air sign next year, I'm fairly certain that's what's happening next year, then we've got a lot of outward expressing energy. We've got a lot of very masculine doing potential going on here that I would thoroughly expect Leo to be playing a huge part in. Right? You're a fire sign. So what is it that you are not seeing? It's simply that, I think. What you're not seeing is that you get to choose. Now, it's not to say that it's going to drop into your lap, because even when you are manifesting hard, there are things that you need to do to kind of, align with that level of manifestation. But if this was simply about just sorting yourself out and, putting out the right kind of mental energy into the universe, then I would expect to see the Lovers rather than the Magician. For me, the Lovers is more about passive alignment with the universe and getting into that co-creative state, right? The Magician is just like full on, what do you want? How are you going to create it? This is saying that you need to have a plan to get what you want. And in order to have a plan to get what you want, you need to know what you want. You need to know the difference between what you want and what you need. You need to recognize that any static energy or anything that feels like you've outgrown it, or anything that just feels like it's old and tired in your life right now, is simply there because you consent it to be so. And if you remove your consent for it to be so, then I feel like everything just opens up. Because the pages are all here. They're all saying you have the skills, you have the talent, you have the ability to think differently enough about your situation that you can start affecting things. I'll be honest, Leo, I think Leos have had the shit slammed out of them this year, and I think that there's been a massive loss of self-confidence. And to be honest, I don't think it started in 2025. I think it went right back to 2024. Where Mars stationed retrograde in Leo, right? I think from that point on, Leos have felt a little bit like they've had the legs cut out from underneath them. And that's not too far away from when Pluto moves into Aquarius either, which kind of doubled down on that energy. This is all about digging really, really deep, Leo. There's nothing fucking surface about what's going on here, but it's also asking you to have faith in your abilities, to have some confidence in your abilities, to have some confidence in your participation in the universe. Now, I know that, you know, the energies of the moment, being in flux as they are actually being rough on all of the fixed signs. Really rough. And there is a degree of fluidity and malleability that is being requested of the fixed signs that doesn't come naturally. It's not part of a fixed sign's makeup to just adapt without even thinking about things. We need a run up at stuff. We need a little bit of time. But I feel like this stasis, this dissatisfaction that you have with where you are, it is entirely self-produced. Like you are literally creating reality second by second, and it's not what you want. And I don't feel like it's a case of you kind of sitting around and complaining about it or anything. It's just like you have not recognized that you have power. You do not recognize that you are not using it right now. And maybe you've forgotten what it feels like to be so aligned with the thought of something that you throw everything that you have into it. There's a little once bitten, twice shy going on here. And I wonder if things have just been so all over the shop for, well, we're in November now, right? 14 months, something like that, that you're almost a little afraid to stick your, you know, your big maned head above the parapet to have a look and see how the land lies. But that's changing this month here. It is changing this month. I don't think it's sudden like that, because we still do have the energy of the Two of Swords being the dominant energy for November for you. But notice how there is fire on this card. And I really like that, because if you realise that you have the power in a way that you have not allowed yourself to think for quite a while, right, and you get to choose where your consent is thrown in this given situation, where your authority is exercised in any given situation, then I think rather than cajoling and you know, pleading with the universe to have mercy on you, I feel like you're just burning shit down, Leo. But it's not burning things down in necessarily that much of a destructive way. It feels like it's making space for the creative. Because I don't think I have another Two of Swords anywhere in the obscene number of tarot decks that I have where there is fire depicted on the card. I'm not even sure of the story behind this particular depiction here. This one is much more standard, right? But we've got an eclipsed sun. No good for Leo. And then over here, we've got the moon, which is the more standard representation that we would see, and we know that the moon is under here too. It feels like you are burning away your own ignorance this month, Leo. And it's coming in, not instantaneously, but it's like a slow, controlled burn of everything that has been Two of Swords like, everything that you have not been able to see about yourself. Whatever's had you feeling disempowered this year, I think this is the month where you start, at the very least, shrugging it off, if not burning it down, because underneath here we have the Four of Wands and the Page of Swords. Now the Four of Wands is all about the creation of a new foundation. That's what's going on here. This one isn't working for you anymore. I'm doing this instead, and it's all come off the back of the realization that actually you have the power in your hands to do this thing, whatever this is. So it's not that you're starting again. It's like, I'm going to build something new. I'm not hanging around where things are like, I'm working on something new. I'm bringing something new to bear. And there is a new kind of perspective that's coming in with it. Now, at the same time, don't expect a map because there isn't one coming. But you do have an internal lamp that will help you feel your way forward, the moon. Fire is highly intuitive. Right? It is the most intuitive element. Water is psychic, but fire is intuitive. And I think what you've been doing is screening out your intuition. I think it's been talking to you, but for whatever reason you haven't been able to hear it. And I think if you choose to hear it, if you choose to turn the volume up on that, and maybe you might speak those very words out loud to the universe, or maybe you just might repeat it in your head. I feel like it's coming in very, very quickly over the course of the month, which is kind of quickly in the grand scheme of things, but not like an instantaneous holy shit moment, but a slow, controlled burn. Just like, nah, not doing that anymore, not doing that anymore. I am going to do this, though, because I'm remembering who the fuck I am. That's what it sounds like. It's what it feels like. I don't say that from an egoic point of view, right? Like saying that you're being, an ego monster about this or anything. It's like, no, the problem has been that you've forgotten who you are. Now you need to remember who you are so that you can set about this, engaging with this creative energy that's kind of wanting to be expressed from you, Leo, which is really, really interesting. So I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to go over to the extended now. If you would like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do that. You can do that on Selfie, you can do that on Circle. I'd be delighted to see you in either place. But like that third eye thing that I had going on in the meditation at the start of the before I started the reading was a cranking open of what you have not been able to see. Like 100% Two of Swords. But it's the obliteration of the Two of Swords. And that opening of the eye was very, very slow, but it was consistent. And that's what we like from Leos, is consistency, right? Because that's the fixed sign thing. You may not be able to force the world to be consistent and unchaotic at the moment, but you can certainly do that of yourself. And I think that's where the important part of this message is for you, Leo. So, like I said, I'm going to go over to the extended. If that's not your bag, that's absolutely fine. I really do think you just need to remember who you are, Leo. I really do. Okay, I'll leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.